A common question that I get a lot is, how do you get into voiceover work? People ask me all the time. They feel like it would be the coolest thing in the world to just use your voice to make an income, to make a living, to work on cartoon shows, to do commercials, to do background voices for different TV shows and films. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I've worked in the voiceover industry for 20 plus years. I've personally recorded Will Ferrell, Will Arnett, J.K. Simmons, Rosie Perez. I've recorded the voiceover guy that you hear on TNT that announces all of the shows that are coming on. I've recorded the voiceover guy for TBS. I've worked on different cartoon shows for uh, Ninja Turtles, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, a lot of different type of shows, commercials, films, and I've really been either a voice talent on a lot of these properties, or I've worked with the voice talent. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about the workings of the voiceover industry, how to get into it, and the in general just how it works and what you need to do. So I just wanted to talk about that since I got asked that question a lot. Number one, a lot of times people ask, how much can you make doing voiceovers? I can tell you that back in the late '90s, um, I remember working with a woman. I believe she had the account. She was the voice for TJ Maxx radio commercials. Also the television commercials, because you can do the voice for radio commercials and that voice still be used on television commercials. And I remember at the time she was sharing with me, she makes six figures and how great it is that she earns six figures. And then she talked about the downside of that at the time, sharing how, you know, the taxes are almost half. So she makes six figures, but she really brings home, 55 grand, 60 grand. The downside of her project having that TJ Maxx voice spot, she is the voice for TJ Maxx, was she ended up losing the account after a while. When TJ Maxx decides to change their target audience and they decide to just change everything about how they're doing things, how they're advertising, you can lose a big gig like that if you're the voiceover person for that account, because they don't always keep you to move forward into their next phase of their advertising. So uh, there's in the voiceover industry we talk about people who have the perfect job, and one of the people we talk about frequently is the voice of the guy who did NFL films. And he had that deep voice, and he describes these plays, and how groundbreaking it was, and record breaking, and how dangerous a hit can be. He gets used for all these things that have to do with NFL films. Um, One of the interesting things that people may not realize is he works from home or wherever he wants to be, and since he is so in demand to do those voiceovers, he pretty much calls the shots. We call him and say, "Are you available to do a voiceover for this NFL commercial we're trying to insert here?" And it's not like we say, Wednesday at 5 o'clock. He is so in demand and have been has been doing this for so long. He's like, I'll let you know when I'm available, and here's the rate. And he makes, you know, upper six figures doing this from the comfort of his home, because we can connect to his studio from anywhere in the world, and vice versa. So that's another example of the voiceover work being very lucrative and comfortable. Same thing for the guy who does the voiceovers for the TNT promos and TBS promos. It's the same guy. When I did a lot of work for TNT and TBS, I didn't see the voiceover guy. He didn't come to my studio. He didn't come into my booth. I connected via what they call ISDN. So it's kind of like when a radio station is at a park or broadcasting from a concert. The reason why you're able to hear that is because they're connected from that park or concert via ISDN. So it's like a phone connection line, and then that's going back to the radio station and being broadcasted. In the same breath, the people I used to record for TNT and TBS were at home, whether it was California or New York, and I'm recording them. We are connected, and then they come through my console, and they could be in their pajamas doing this work. And when we connect, I say hi to the same guy, and we talk to each other like we know each other personally, because they do this work all the time. When they do the promos for TBS or TNT, they're doing a week's worth of promos at the least. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I say a week's worth, so they may say, let's say, the movie Terminator is coming on, for example. So they might say Terminator series this month, right? So there's a commercial for the this month version. Then there's another commercial that he has to do for Terminator the series coming in 2 weeks. That's a separate commercial that he is getting paid for. Then they have Terminator series this week, Terminator series in 2 days, Terminator series tomorrow, Terminator series starts tonight. Those are all separate commercials that the voiceover talent is getting paid for. So I mean, this can be very lucrative, but sometimes you can say there's a handful of people who have those jobs. NFL Films guy, the guy for TBS, the guy for TNT, and certain other things. You hear the voice over and over. If you listen to a lot of movie trailers, there's a handful of guys who are doing those movie trailers because they're the best at it. They have the voice. They have that spot for the next 5 years, 7 years. So in some cases, it can be difficult to get into depending on what area you're trying to go into. But in some cases, it can be very lucrative because sometimes they're not looking for that movie guy's voice or the woman who is going to do the voiceover commercials for Target. They just want your voice. Whatever your voice sounds like is perfect. So a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to get into voiceovers, and they start practicing cartoony sounding characters. You don't have to do that. Just your voice is sometimes what people are looking for when you have commercials for insurance and grocery store commercials. They just want to hear the voice of a normal person. So let me talk about how to get into it. Usually, to get into voiceover work, you need a voiceover reel, a demo reel of your voice range. So do you do serious voices, dramatic voices that talk about pharmaceutical ingredients or doctor recommended things? Or do you have a great mommy voice where it's just like, hey, I love taking my kids to dance because it means this to me and that to me, X, Y, and Z? Just you, whatever your voice is, you have to perfect how your cadence is going to be, whether or not you can get more intimate and closer to the mic, or just be really fun, or a lot of times directors will say you need more smile in your voice. Smile. I want to hear a smile. Or your voice is telling a story, and what makes you a good voiceover is not how many cartoon characters you can do, is how you can bring the audience into what you're doing, whether it's a comedic spot, whether it's dramatic. How clear are you? How natural sounding are you while being clearer, more clear than most? Do you know how to work the microphone? So you need a reel of work that you can present to an agent, and you don't have to be assigned to an agent exclusively. You can have several agents that send you scripts that you can audition for. And nowadays, if you have a studio at home or a good vocal booth, a microphone set up at home, you can audition at home. They will email you scripts. You audition from the comfort of your own home. You send those auditions in MP3 file right back to your agent, and see if you can land some of these jobs. The challenge is getting the agent. Um, what else? That's what's at the top of my head right now as far as getting into voiceover work. If you can speak well, if you can read well, you have to be really good at reading. You should be able to just have a script in front of you and just start going through it. If you're pausing and stopping because you're not familiar with the words, you need to become a better reader. And even in that case, even if you're not a top level reader, you can look over the script, and then if you can get a grasp of just using inflection, which is when do you make your voice go up or make it go down, or when do you emphasize the product name? Should you emphasize the word before the product name, or should you emphasize the product name at the end of the product name or at the beginning of the product name? You know, um, all of these things, you can, if you master some of those things, you can really do well in voiceover work and just have a great career. So that's it for now. If you have specific questions, just put them in the comments, and I'll have more on this topic soon.